Hey folks, let's go ahead get started with the meeting. I saw a couple of agendas on today's calendar invites. Let's go through each of them. Sridaha, did I pronounce your name correctly? You want to go first?
Sure, Lynn. Yeah, thank you.
Do you have anything to present?
Well, I don't have anything to present, but I just wanted to use this opportunity to give a quick update on where we are with respect to NF tables, and also want to get some feedback about the next steps. Okay, so as you probably know, NF tables is the successor of IP tables, and many Linux distributions like Rock Linux, Ubuntu, Fedora, Debian, and so on are starting to phase out IP tables in favor of NF tables. So it's important that Istio supports NF tables natively, and the earlier we add this, the more time we'll have to test and stabilize this feature before it's used in production. So we recently added native NF table support for sidecars in Istio, and the PR has already been merged. I'd like to thank a couple of folks who actually, help us to review this PR. And like iptable relies on tools like iptable save and iptable restore, the NF tables implementation that we have in Istio today relies on the NFT CLI binary. So recently, Yodlin opened a PR to include this binary in both the distro list as well as the debug images, and it has been merged as well. However, we noticed that when we include the current NFT binary from the Wolfie repository, it pulls in additional libraries like ncurses, readline, and so on, which increase the size of the Istio distroless image from 10 megabytes to 30 megabytes. Since Istio doesn't use any of these extra features, we were advised to work with the Wolfie team to create a slimmer version of the package that excludes these libraries that are no longer required, or basically that's not required for Istio. So we actually submitted a PR to the Wolfie repo and to add this new NF table slim package, but it's currently stuck. And there are some CI failures, and we're not able to get uh, proper attention from the maintainers yet. We have pinged the maintainers with Slack and also like reached out to them on the PR itself, but so far we don't have any luck on that. So my ask is like we have two options. Option number one is to ship Istio 1.27 with the current larger NFT binary in the distroless image. And once we have the slimmer version available, update the distroless image later on. The other option that I was thinking about is maybe we can remove the NFT binary from the distroless image for now, while keeping it in only the debug image, and add a note about this in the release notes. So we are okay with either of the approach, and I just want to get your thoughts on which direction makes the most sense.
Okay, I think we fixed our screen sharing, and I saw Costin and John had some comment. Do any of you wants to weigh in?
Just curious.
Sorry, Constantine, were you saying something?
Sorry, Costin, it wasn't just me. Okay.
Sorry, I said I was just curious. No comment.
Okay. Thanks. John, do you have any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, I just want to. My internet cut out for a second right at the very end. Were you saying basically you're proposing that we put it only in the debug image and not distroless?
Yes, John, that is one of the options. Like I discussed two options.
Yeah.
Option
Okay. Or we just make it bigger.
Yeah.
Let's probably. Well, I don't know. Is NF tables? It's experimental in this release, right?
Kind of, yeah. It's a new feature.
What's like on the Red Hat side? So I know you guys are getting rid of IP tables on Red Hat. Like, is that like a problem like today? And like you're like Red Hat users are like likely to adopt NF tables in 1.27 like in the coming months, or it's like, you know, we just need a future proof for something happening 6 months down the line.
We have a couple of months, so it's not that we need it immediately, but we still need support for ambient. So that's what we are working on.
Gotcha.
But the sooner we have some time to experiment and stabilize the feature.
Yeah, as long as it's going to be like in this experimental mode, then I would slightly lean towards just doing the debug image, and then, you know, probably, hopefully by the time it's not experimental mode, we have in the distro list image. If it was something that it's like we're going to start using it right now, then maybe we could just bite the extra cost, especially because we know it's temporary. Does that make sense? I don't hate the other option too. I'm fine with either one. I just slightly lean towards that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm fine with it. Like unless you online, or I think we have Daniel as well here if they want to chime in. But John, I also have a request here. Like, you know, in the long run, we agree that, you know, the better solution is to get the NF table slim, not only for distro list, but even for debug as well. But if the community has any contacts with the Wi-Fi maintainers, we'd really appreciate your help in making some progress or getting the PR some attention from the community.
Yeah, I can reach out to them. I assume, is the PR ready to go? It just needs them to hit the approve button, basically.
Yes.
Lonely, do you want to chime in on this?
Yes. The PI is ready to go from my local testings, all those steps working in local environment. However, I need to mention that I think the Wi-Fi OS community side, their CI job is not working. Actually, the maintainer is creating a test PRs for building their existing NF table packages. Data rebuild fails in the CI jobs and passed in their local environment. So that's another issues from their side. So currently, my PR skipped the test pipeline side to avoid that errors in the CI job.
Keith, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I was going to say, I have a slight preference the other way, just because I imagine a user who is wanting to use NF tables sees the, we can kind of clarify in release notes, but I'm wanting to avoid a surprise where the user turns on this new NF tables mode to try it out, and it crashes because the binary is not in the image, because I happen to use distro lists.
Yeah, I get that as well. Like the only reason why I was favoring that is like technically if we go that option one, then we're making the stable experience worse for a new experimental feature. Now, is it how much worse? I don't know. Like that, to be fair, like for a while we shipped bash in the distro list images and no one actually noticed except for actually maybe someone did notice eventually, but it took a while for people to notice. So, you know, maybe it's actually not that big of a deal, especially short term. But it was just a more conservative approach.
Sure, that's fair.
Okay, I'll try to break the tie between 1 and 2 by saying why we should put 3 on the table with using native library for NF table. In my opinion, long term, that's the best solution because not only right now we run IP table or NF table at start, and we do not have kind of any mechanism to change it dynamically or do any kind of other. With the library, not only we get access to an ability to make changes dynamically if we want at some point, but the library also exposes a lot of other kernel functionality to the you know that protocol that they are using, and you know, I think we can watch namespace creation. We can do a lot of other things that are becoming available. Take into account that Kubernetes now has user namespaces, and there are a lot of other things that may happen in a pod in the future as things evolve. So it may be worth the cost to just to have an implementation using the native library. That's my opinion. Of course, sorry for confusing things further.
So, Constant, are you suggesting that instead of using any binary, basically like executing and running a binary, your suggestion, if I understand correctly, is to use some kind of library, like a netlink library that provides.
Yes, there is a netlink. Yes, there is a Go library, I think Google Netlink or something that is used in quite a few projects, and I think used in Kubernetes in some places as well. So
Right,
it's not
yeah.
unheard of or something completely new, but the library is very powerful first of all, because it's runtime and because it's and of course there are other libraries. I mean, I'm sure there are other libraries that that are available, but this one is I'm familiar with it and I used it in the past.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Rust
I mean,
has a similar library.
yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, so the reason why we took this approach is twofold. One is that couple of existing Kubernetes projects, like for example, take kubeproxy, or you take Calico, or you take OVN Kubernetes and all, they are not using the native NFTables library, but they are using a wrapper on top of it, which is called as a KNFTables. Okay, and this KNFTables is actually widely used in any of the Kubernetes ecosystems. And in the longer run, if KNFTables itself adopts a netlink library, it's not only going to help one single project, but it actually is going to help the whole ecosystem itself.
Any library is fine on any wrapper, but I suspect most libraries are eventually wrapping and using at low levels this library. So this library wrapped, whatever. But my point is having it running all the time. I mean, as long as Istio is running, it's a very big feature. Ability to change the tables at runtime dynamically, to watch changes made by other programs, because that's one problem we have, that maybe some other program is going into the namespace and changing the tables. It's quite useful. I mean, because you can also watch changes and do a lot of other things. So long term, as if we want to, 5 years down the road, I think that will be the winner.
Yeah, I mean, I do see your point of view, and I understand that using the library is better. But what I'm just trying to convey here is, like, we were trying to adopt the existing usage that's already done with Kubernetes. But in the longer run, yes, either Istio project itself can do that, or we can talk to the KNFTables maintainers to see if we can contribute there, or if they are willing to actually adopt the library so that other projects in the ecosystem can benefit from this. And also, there was another discussion that I actually had with the maintainers of KNFTables, and he himself confirmed that the Netlink API, which is there, like for example from Google, I think, is not directly readable enough. It's not like straightforward for anyone to to map the man pages, or like the general man pages that where you see. So it's much more difficult. It's much more difficult for somebody to actually read and understand and fix or maintain the code. And that's one of the reasons why they went in that particular direction.
Well, it's not like IP table. It's very readable, or our code is very understandable as it is. But yeah, I agree with you. There is a point there, but it's a worthy investment, and there are plenty of examples.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with my question quick because it's a few other things on the agenda. So can you walk us through a user scenario, like experience of user switching from IP tables to this new thing? NF tables, is it global? Do they have to switch global, or can they switch gradually? How would that work?
So currently, since this is a new feature, we have added it behind the feature flag. So if somebody is interested in switching to NF tables, because it also depends on the platform, right? It's like you need to expect certain libraries, like binaries, and also support from the kernel. So it requires support from platform. So it's behind a feature flag. By default, it's IP tables, but when you explicitly set that flag, that's when NF tables code kicks in.
And it's effective. So if I enable that flag, that would apply to everything on in my mesh, in the whole entire cluster.
Right. So what we have done so far is we have added the NF table support for the sidecar mode, which includes the Istio init, as well as when you're using Istio CNI. Support for ambient, we are working on it, and as soon as we have the PR ready, we will push for it. But coming back to your answer, yes, wherever we are using IP tables today for traffic redirection, we will be using NF tables for the similar purpose.
Okay, and all the requires a restart of the application to pick up the new NF table. Is that correct?
Kind of, because anyway, if your platform needs to have this support, you will either reboot the nodes, or you'll have to restart the pods, because that's where you reprogram all the traffic redirection rules.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else we should be discussing on this topic, or should we move to the next topic?
I think I'm not sure whether we came to any logical conclusion, like, constant raise some points as a long-term solution. We will try to pursue using the library, but as a shorter-term solution, John suggested that maybe we can use debug. At the same time, he was not like very hard on that, it should not be in distro list, but Keith also mentioned that there's no harm in including it in distro list as well. So do we have any logical conclusion that what option we want to take for now?
So I think what's unknown is, let's say if you put it in our defaults, what's unknown is the impact for the sidecar, right? If you tell us there's no impact for the sidecar, we'd be more comfortable. But right now we don't know if that's true.
Well, the whole of the implementation is under the feature flag, so I don't think that there will be any impact for sidecar, because the whole of CI is running, because the entire feature is under a feature flag. See, the main concern I think John also has is the increase in the size of the distro list, and probably because it also increases the surface area, the attack surface area, right? I think that's probably his concern.
Yeah, because regardless of I'm enabling a future flag or not, meaning I'm using it or not, it's part of the image, right? If we build it into the image.
Mm-hmm. Okay. See, for example, as I mentioned, like, we are completely okay to include it just within the debug image for now, mark it as an experimental feature.
Collect some feedback first, then we can rediscuss if it makes sense to be part of the default image.
Fine. That's absolutely fine with us.
Honestly, I don't feel super strongly if, in the interest of giving them moving forward, maybe we just go with the debug image for now.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think that's what Sridhar was comfortable too. So yeah.
And to double check, you have a fallback. I mean, if user sets NF table and you don't find NF tables, but you find IP tables, you'll use IP tables.
Okay, so currently we don't have that, but it's doable, because see, the reason why NF tables is under feature flag is because it's a new feature and it's experimental. But like if you think that when user explicitly configures NF tables mode, I personally believe that failing hard is much better than transparently falling back to IP tables.
I have to strongly disagree with this. I mean, first of all, I don't think any user cares about NF tables. They care about things working. And NF table is just one way to get things working. I don't think anyone say, oh, if I happen to run a kernel that doesn't have NF table, just crash and burn. That's not. I haven't met any user who has this opinion.
It's a feature flag, Costin. So right now, because it's experimental, it's explicitly behind a feature flag. So there is some explicit opt-in.
But the feature flags are meant, hey, if you have NF table, use it, not break if you don't have it. So yeah, I mean, if you have both IP table and NF tables, the feature flag will pick NF table. That's wonderful. But I don't think we should have flags that are burn if we happen to be on a, because it's outside of the user control how the admin of the cluster is going to configure the kernels on the nodes.
But then sorry, Constant. Like for example, let's say you want to experiment, you want to try out whether your underlying platform has the support for NF tables. So you enable this flag. Okay.
And you check the logger of RZ. You check the logger of RZ to check to see if NF table was used. I mean, it's not like you are not.
But then not many users might actually look into the logs to understand that NF tables is really used. So if the intention is to actually try out NF tables, that's the reason why they enabled the NF tables feature flag. So let's fail hard.
Not the metric. A metric. We can expose, right? The init container, I think, can expose, or well, actually not init container, but the Istio, not Istio, sorry. The sidecar can expose the metric if NF table is used or not. and then they can see it across the fleet. They can do rollouts safely from one to another. I don't know. It feels maybe Lynn has an opinion about this crash users versus just because you want to test the flag.
Do we have any existing metric for IP tables? I mean, in the sense, I'm just trying to understand. In case if there is, probably then we can just add it, update it to include NF tables as well.
We don't because it was only choice, but I think usually if you have multiple options, it's useful to have metrics in a telemetry-oriented platform.
Okay. But then, when
I don't think it's important. So that important. I mean, if user wants to verify if a table is working, there are plenty of ways to find out. Some logs. There is not really the. My point is, I cannot see the user who wants their cluster to burn because of the differences in the nodes.
well, what we can do is, currently NF tables is still, in the development phase, experimented and all. Once we are confident enough to promote it as a GA feature, then I do see your point. At that point of time, we can always, do whatever you mentioned, whatever you suggested, basically. Like in case if NF tables is not there, fall back to IP tables. I think
That's fine. That's fine. At least before it gets to production, it should have a fallback because again, it's a production user to not care about experiments.
Correct. Yeah.
I think it's a very academic discussion, really, because I mean we're obviously doing this mostly because RHEL is moving to NF tables and planning to remove IP table support. So the fallback on that system will not work, and it will always have to use NF tables. And every other user trying to enable it, they will probably want to explicitly use NF tables if they enable this experimental flag. So yeah, I think that's really an edge case. I agree with Sridhar that failing silently and just falling back to IP tables is not a great solution, especially for a flag, an experimental flag that you explicitly have to enable, where, as Sridhar said, people might want to try it and then see, look, it works. We support NF tables, without actually noticing that in the back it changed to IP tables because the binary wasn't found in the distroless image that they're using. So yeah, I agree that we can revisit this once we progress the feature to a more stable state, but at this point, I don't think that's required.
And don't forget the upgrades, because when a Kubernetes cluster is upgraded, it's usually node by node, and one node will get NF table, but the others will be in the old version. So upgrades will become impossible if you have this, when it becomes to production, of course.
All right, Ian, could you go?
Yeah, we could potentially also be very loud at install time if they have this feature enabled and they're using a distroless image. We know right then and there that it's just not going to work for them.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
The harder one, I think, is what Costin's talking about, which is like there's no underlying kernel support. That's tricky.
Yeah, makes sense, Ian. So let me work on the PR so that we allow the user right at the time of installation.
All right, I took some notes. Feel free to add anything I missed, but let's move to the next topic, and we have a few other topics too. So, Jacek, are you here? Sorry. Do we have Jacek? Very, very quiet if you are speaking.
Is it better? Feel quiet.
Maybe slightly better, but still not good enough.
Oh, I don't know what's going on. Wait a second. A little better?
Yeah, try again. I think it's better last time.
And now?
Yeah, now it's good.
Okay. So I will share my screen. Okay. I want to present.
Oh, yeah, I'll stop sharing.
Changes my.
Okay, so this is a follow-up to the discussion from 2 weeks ago, and I addressed your questions to this proposal. I didn't change anything about background and goals. The fundamentals stay the same. I was focused on ambient mode, how it might work in ambient. First of all, little change. I changed the name of the label used to mark egress, cross-network egress gateways. Previously, it was just topology, so networks, and that was the source of confusion because of the S. So I changed it to more explicit name. So it's egress to networks. It can contain multiple values. So single workload can be used to route traffic to multiple remote clusters. Okay, and let's go to ambient mode. Okay, the idea is I would like to reuse waypoint to route regular mesh external traffic and mesh internal cross-network traffic, and it would require users to apply waypoint gateway and specify TLS port 15443, or it could be customized with the existing label gateway port. And if this port exists and if the waypoint is marked as egress to network, is marked as cross-network egress, this port would be used to perform auto pass-through traffic to remote ingresses. But this port will receive unterminated H-bound traffic, so it will require to implement SNI in the Z-tunnel, because to reuse egress, single egress, for multiple ingresses without termination, the outer H-bone, we need that information explicitly in the TLS connection. So my idea is to add SNI to the outer H-bone connection. And then this listener will be able to route based on SNI, like it's in classic egress or ingress or auto pass-through. And yeah, this is the most important change in the proposal. And there was also a question about enterprise gateways or third-party gateways from Costing. And he challenged me to answer the question how gateways existing in the VPC could be discovered and used to route egress for cross-network. So I think that the label should be applicable to services, and then Istio could discover external name services or headless services, which would be configured for that particular for third-party gateway. This is my idea. And if that gateway doesn't support the default port, it also can be labeled with gateway port. So it would not require any special configuration, just users would need to create service. And yeah, so that's the idea. What do you think?
Can you walk me through the request flow from the client to the gateway to the other cluster, just to make sure I'm rocking it?
Okay, I didn't include any diagram to show that. But I assume that in cross-network, in multi-network traffic, when a waypoint exists in the local cluster, in the cluster, in the client's cluster, it's not used, right? Waypoint is omitted in the client's cluster, right? It always goes through from Z2NL to remote ingress gateway, and then to remote waypoint, right? Is that correct?
If the traffic distribution makes that sort of weird, because by default, we will prefer local endpoints first. But if the initial routing decision by ztunnel at L4 is going to a remote cluster, then yes, that remote waypoint will be the one that is traversed.
Okay. So if this assumption is correct, Z2NL will have to know about remote east-west gateways. It already knows,
Right.
but it will have to apply a unique SNI for each remote east-west gateway. And if
Well, back up 1 second. That's where I'm getting a bit confused. So, what sort of request is ztunnel initiating? Is it a
The
double
same-
HBOM request? Is it a single HBOM request? Like what sort of when ztunnel goes across the network, what sort of HBOM request is it initiating, and to what destination?
Okay, so when Z2NL selects remote endpoints, it sends outer HBOM, right? It opens additional HBOM connection, right? Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yes. So there's an outer HBOM connection and there's an inner HBOM connection.
Okay.
Yes.
So if this is correct, I think that Z2NL needs to add SNI to that outer HBOM because it's MTLS over. Yeah, there is MTLS, right? So in this connection should be SNI, and the outer HBOM should go to egress gateway. Egress gateway knows which remote east-west gateway it should select because it knows SNI. And so the HBOM goes unterminated through the egress gateway and is terminated in the east-west gateway in another cluster.
How do you get from the SNI to knowing which remote east-west gateway to go to?
Could you repeat the question?
How do you do so? Okay, so the egress gateway gets a request with an SNI.
Yeah.
What is the SNI? It's the service host name.
It could be service host name, whatever what is unique within the cluster. Because for now, HBOM doesn't use SNI, so SNI is irrelevant for traffic routing in multi-cluster.
Yeah. Okay. Let's say it's the host name. Now it gets his host name request.
Yeah.
Oh wait, you're saying it's the network name?
It could be. I was thinking about some unique value, but it could be discussed what it should be. But that was the idea.
Okay, so the ztunnel is actually picking which network to go to. The egress gateway isn't the one that picks it.
It's picking the network anyway because it contains endpoints for remote east-west gateways, right? So each endpoint would be related to dedicated, unique SNI used only internally.
Okay. So regardless of whether that's a good idea or not, I don't actually know that what you're saying there is feasible with Envoy, because Envoy doesn't allow you to have multiple distinct configurations for the same IP address. And so wouldn't we be saying basically, let's say I have two remote networks, we'd be having two endpoints for the same local egress gateway IP address, but for different networks. And I wonder if Envoy might explode from that.
As I said at the beginning, I assume that this connection can be originated only by Z2NL. So I assume that Waypoint will never send this request.
Oh, I don't think that assumption is accurate. And also there's ingress gateway as well.
But ingress will. This is irrelevant for ingress. Ingress.
No, I'm talking. Ingress gets a request and it says go to foo, and foo is in a different network. Now it has to go to cross network, right? There's no reason that ingress can't call across the network. It's actually, in my experience, one of the most common cases for doing the cross network calls is you only have your ingress do cross network calls.
Okay, I think this is fairly complicated, so it will be good to draw some diagrams to explain to you how I understand it with deep explanation. But it's worth to explain what be enabled in the future that Waypoint can send outer H-bone remote cluster. For now, only Z2Node sends outer H-bone, right? Waypoints do not send cross-network traffic for today. Is this correct?
Today, correct, yes.
And will that change?
That is on the roadmap, though, we should mention.
Ah, okay.
But to be clear, I mean, using FQDN mangling is a tradition that has existed for 30 years or so and will continue to, I mean, since the TLS was invented. I don't think it's controversial or in the internet that you can use some FQDN that identify specific things. And taking advantage of it and having ingress, one ingress, not even our ingress, any kind of ingress can take advantage of FQDN name mangling and using SNI. Not only in the, I mean, inner layer, outer layer, all of them can have SNI and take advantage of the SNI capabilities.
Okay.
Yes, and we have seen some issues in the last couple of years with Java specifically, preventing us from or taking some steps to that break some of our FPD and SNI mangling. So my personal bias is to try to move away from that as much as we can, and that's one of the reasons we chose double H-bone for multi-network is because we no longer need to have that dependency on SNI mangling.
Yeah, but Keith, this isn't proposing the legacy Istio cross-network SNI format. It's actually proposing essentially putting the network name as the SNI.
Among other things, I mean, in FQDMs that include the network name and other things. I mean, maybe the pod ID and some other things.
Oh, interesting. So wasn't the goal for this to have like an egress gateway for talking to a specific network? Oh, but an egress gateway could be the egress gateway for multiple networks. Yeah.
You pick like basically if I understand right, you could essentially make a static envoy config that says match SNI network 1, send to network 1, match SNI network 2, send to network 2.
Right.
Yep.
But that begs the question is why I still don't get necessarily why we need to change Istio to do this. Like you should already be able to do this with Istio today because you can already configure network 1 uses this this gateway. Maybe you end up with a port per network instead of using SNI, but that seems
okay. If port per network is okay, is acceptable, that's okay to me.
But I'm just saying, like, there's a big difference in what I just said and saying that we change this proposal to be port per network. Because what I'm saying is that Istio already has configuration that would enable you to do this today. Meaning that if we were to go down that path, I'm not hard sold on that, right? Like, I think there could be value in having something more native. But if we were to go down that path, it would mean there's no need for a PR, there's no need for a design doc, there's no need for approval. You just go do this today because Istio already supports it, right?
To clarify, I mean, yes, if you know what you are doing and if you do a very verbose and complicated configuration, everything is possible today. And you don't even need to use Istio gateway. You can use any gateway in the world, Nginx or anything else, and it will work perfectly fine because everyone can do SNI routing those days. However, a design doc to make it easy, automated, simple, have a good UX, it's a different story. And multiple ports also work obviously today. But in many cases, in particular, if you want to use a dedicated gateway that is not controlled by you, like an infrastructure gateway, they expose only port 443 and they give you ability to do SNI routing. So if you are working with a foreign gateway, that's the most viable solution and the one that is pretty much guaranteed to work with almost everything.
John, can I say something? I don't agree that it works for today because if I will have egress gateway marked for network, and I want to say if I have local egress gateway for some network, and remote ingress gateway for that network is discovered, Istio will use both these ports, both these addresses to create endpoints for these workloads, and traffic will be splitted partially to local egress and remote ingress. So it's not feasible today.
Right. You should not configure it that way. And maybe it's very hard. Like I'm confident it can be done. Maybe it's extremely painful instead of just moderately painful. I agree with what you said. Like if you do it that way, it wouldn't work. Like again, I'm not, just to be clear, like I'm not at all saying we must not do this and you could just do it yourself today. I'm just saying like it is a possible path we should always keep in mind. And when I said we could use multiple ports, I was not saying if we do something first class, multiple ports is likely not the right answer. So, but it is potentially a viable answer to solve this today. Costin, I generally agree with you on SNI. I am curious though, like this SNI that is being proposed is essentially shoving like the network name in, which is not really a domain name, right? It's kind of a
not exactly this format. I mean, I think all SNIs should be mapped possibly to a real DNS name and have FQDNs that are discoverable and can be used. But you have the last part, which is a real domain name, and in front you can shove anything you want. I mean, you can put the cluster, you can put the network, you can put the pod hash, you can put even the IP, you can put so having a flexible scheme that allows us to have maximum flexibility and each label in the domain is has the meaning is very useful. And if you look at DNSSD, they also kind of have the underscore TCP, underscore SSH, and so forth. I mean, they are well-defined patterns that have been proven to work very well for this purpose. And if you also happen to have a real DNS that is reflecting that, you have maximum compatibility because any client could basically use real DNS. I mean, it doesn't have to be Istio. It can be anything in the world. Does a DNS lookup, get a CNAME, and then you have the name flowing.
Yeah. Well, the underscores is what Keith was talking about, by the way. That is questionably spec compliant. It's kind of vague. But I generally agree. Like if we were to propose that if you have a gateway address that's configured with the host name, then we send SNI with that host name. I think that I would have no problem with. And I'm not saying that's the only thing I would agree to. I'm just saying like that seems to me at least.
Step by step. Step by step. We can start with this step, yes.
But synthetic SNIs is when we start getting to hairy territory for sure, just based on past.
Let's not call it synthetic. Let's call it, real DNS names with a possible backing in DNS and in Istio DNS or real DNS that have to have some naming conventions where you have namespace in part of the name, you have cluster part of the name, you have network part of the name, and you have a suffix that is under the user control. Order, and as we can discuss, we can have multiple patterns, we can let user put a template or whatever, but it's not bad to have best practices for naming names. And to reflect it in.
We don't even need anything other than the network name, right? Like,
well,
why do we have service name and namespace here?
We don't need it now, but we may need it in the future because you may have some policies on the border that is not decrypting, but it's just looking at SNI. You may want to have inspection. You may it's useful to have names that are meaningful.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I got a bit sidetracked with all this SNI discussion. The question I really wanted to ask was, do we want the client to pick the network they go to, or the egress gateway to pick? I don't have necessarily an answer. I just want us to make sure that we come up with an answer.
That wasn't my intention. I think it should work for what is already allowed in multi-network deployments. I didn't think about any specific like selecting egress or particular network. No, I didn't think about this. I don't think it's expected. Yeah, Keith.
Yeah, I guess one concern that I have with what was just said, combined with the SNI approach, is that if the egress gateway is doing pass-through, how does it apply policy?
If you look at the, oh, sorry, I don't mean to answer for you, check it. But if you look at the goals, because I asked the same question to myself, it doesn't necessarily need to apply policy.
Yeah.
The goal really is that you already have a policy that says traffic can only flow from the egress gateway.
Yes. Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, so you want to basically have, in theory, some sort of firewall that says, outside of your Istio mesh deployment, that says traffic should only be flowing from these nodes or what have you, as an example.
Yes, essentially, the goal is to keep network policy to allow traffic only from egress gateways, because that works in single cluster deployment. If you go to multi-network, you have to disable those network policies or adjust them somehow but it doesn't. It's not always possible to adjust network policies to work in multi-network. For example, if remote east-west gateways don't have stable IPs and you're using DNS to resolve them, then you cannot specify network policy for such use case. Yeah, so that's the main goal. Egress gateway will not enforce any policy.
I have a question. So this seems more like we want traffic to route through this node kind of thing instead of like a specific Istio problem, right?
I'm
curious.
It's about pod.
Okay, so it's saying we want to go through this pod.
Yeah.
I thought it was through this pod on this node. I'm just wondering why this is.
I think it's both, right? You want the traffic to route through the egress gateway, and the egress gateway typically placed on certain nodes that's external, potentially allowed for firewall access.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just my first thought here is that this would be more of like a routing, like more L4 CNI sort of problem instead of very specific Istio problem. Like you can route traffic from.
Yeah, I think you could for sure solve this with Cilium, like you're saying. I'm not saying that means we shouldn't solve it necessarily, but it's definitely something that could be solved by the CNI. It is solved by some CNIs at the very least. Well, maybe not this exact problem if you literally have a policy that's only the egress pod, but similar concept, right? Like Cilium literally has a thing called an egress gateway, for example, which is, I believe, like an L3 thing, not a proxy thing. By the way, I've said like a lot of comments here. I'm not trying to like hate on this proposal. I think it's just a very interesting one with a lot of discussion. So most of my comments are more clarification and stuff, not necessarily pushing back too hard on this.
Okay, thanks. I will think how it might be done when waypoint will originate outer edge bound, because then it's not possible with this approach. Because if waypoint will select endpoints, it couldn't apply different SNI to different endpoints. SNI will be per cluster, and that's the main problem. Yeah.
Other question I have, let's assume we do the SNI thing. That impacts the client side. Now we have a gateway. Do we need to do this auto pass-through mode? Because it's actually kind of different from what auto pass-through means today in Istio. Or could we just have users configure a gateway and say network X maps to, I guess maybe that's kind of tedious too.
That's fine, but it's not very flexible when you scale to more clusters, and you have to.
Yeah, you have to do each one manually. Yeah, yeah, that's fair. Okay. Maybe it is useful to have something like that, but maybe auto pass through is already overloaded, so we might need to not use the same name just because that has a different semantic. But that's a minor thing potentially.
Okay, thank you for feedback. Is there another question? Okay, thanks. I'm stop sharing.
All right. I think we only have a few minutes left. Do we feel it's sufficient time to discuss any of the topic? If not, we can queue them up for next week.
Yeah, I had one about our Helm values. I'll very quickly wait, I'll share my screen and just walk you through the issue that I created. That's not going to
All
take more
right,
than a
let's
minute.
do that.
So we currently have a problem with respect to our Helm API. It's actually something that we talked about a long time ago. We don't really have a connection between the Helm values we use in the charts and the protobuf that Istio uses. So now we're in the situation that we have a bunch of fields that Istio will actually not let you use. So I put one example here, values global proxy variant. Istio will just refuse to use that field because it says it's an unknown field. That field, though, works if you're using Helm to install because it's actually in the Helm charts. It's just been forgotten to be added to the protobuf files, which is a shame. And honestly, I don't really know why we're still stuck. Well, I kind of know why we're stuck with protobuf, probably because nobody bothered to remove it. But I created this issue so I wrote a script that actually finds the fields. I don't know if this is a complete list, but I found at least 19 fields that are used in charts but are not present in the protobuf files. So all of these fields are basically supported, but you can't use them if you use Istio. So first of all, I guess we need to close that gap, add the things to the protobuf file to fix that. And then what we can talk about next time maybe is how do we get out of the situation? So one possibility would be to have a linting step that actually verifies that you added the fields to the protobuf. It's very brittle though, so this script that I wrote, it has a lot of hard-coded stuff because of all the merging magic we do in the Helm templates. It's actually really hard to find out if a field is present in the protobuf or not. And it also doesn't go the other way yet. So if you add something to the protobuf that's not actually used in the charts, that's not detected. So you still have some of the disconnect even if you use the script. So maybe we should go with something else, and the initial proposal would be here to go with the Helm schema and just add Helm schemas to all the charts, and then basically add a linter on those Helm schemas so that we can verify that when you add a field, when you're using your field in the charts, you also need to add it to the Helm schema, and then we can migrate Istio to use the Helm schemas instead of protobuf and get rid of that old cruft. Yes, Stephen?
I'm curious, is there a reason why we can't just have the values field be like a map of like string to any? And like that we don't have
that
problem
would
at
fix
all.
the problem. I think back then this was implemented so that we could have type validation in Istio, but it's obviously creating more problems than it solves. So that's another option. I don't know how much we want to support Istio anyway. Then again, I think having Helm schemas for the charts would be helpful for users because we can also generate documentation. We can use Helm to validate stuff. So I think there's a clear benefit to having Helm schemas. But yeah, we can also, as a first step, just remove that type validation and make it a map, and then at least we get rid of the problem that Istio will refuse to apply certain fields.
Yeah, I think I like Helm schemas better, but I was just curious why it's the way it is.
Daniel, can't protobuf files be automatically generated from the Helm schemas and then just it's just created as part of a build step?
I don't think there's a need for protobuf specifically. The only thing, like maybe in the past there was more of a need, but we've actually moved away from almost all protobuf usage in the Istio Cuddle except for this thing. And so if we had any schema we could validate, I'm pretty sure we'd be fine. Actually, we might want some Go types. Maybe it's not true. It doesn't need to be protobuf, but we do need Go types. And so technically we could generate Go types from JSON schema, I'm sure, but maybe tricky. We could look at how much we need the Go types as well. I'm not necessarily convinced that there's that much. We moved most of the core away from using the Go types to using like, I don't know what you want to call it, but just like unstructured typing, essentially. I'm not sure how much though. So sorry, I know you asked that to Daniel, but
So
Yeah, I
we're at
think
the
we-
top of the hour. Should we continue next week? I think there's a lot of interest on this topic, Daniel, from what I can tell. And there's some desire to stabilize the API, make it consistent so we have a better user experience.
Yeah, I can come back with this next week.
Yeah, so we'll put you the first for next week. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. See ya.
See you later.
Thanks, Ben.
See you. Bye.